So welcome. And thank you once again for having me. This is just a great event, and I'm just trying to pull up some notes on my computer. Anyway, I was asked by Annette to sort of tie in the Whitefish Bay. Welcome to Whitefish Bay, and as all of you know, that I'm the village president. It's an elected position to a 3-year term. While we do things that are very different than the schools, my kids did go to Whitefish Bay High School, and I think it's vitally important to sort of meld the students in school and the real world political. So kudos to all the students who are doing this hard work to do this. So 75 years ago, the UN was formed, and when you think of 75 years ago, 1945, you really think of the end of World War II. Really, sometimes when I want to think about current events today and the end of World War II and what made that ending so different than the First World War, was that we really the United States and their allies came together to help Germany rebuild. They, unlike the First World War, and it really seems apropos today when we're celebrating 75 years of the UN, that it's formed in the same.
I think you're muted, Miss Siegel.
I'm not muting myself. I'm not quite sure what's going on with my computer today. Anyway, you know, I just think that, like, when you think of the end of World War II and, you know, 75 years ago, and that the UN was formed in that same year, just how vitally important it is, you know, to work together. Refugee rights, the World Health Organization, the Atomic Energy, the International Monetary Fund. These are all agencies that are vitally important in the world today, and that they've been around for 75 years is really, really remarkable, and it credits to the UN and all the people that work so hard. And so I was thinking about Mr. Lubar and the Lubar family, and I see a lot of his kids who I know in the community, and grandkids are on this call today. And Mr. Lubar, if I've got this correct, you're 91, which would have made you 16 at the time, and which is really the same age as these high school kids who are doing all this really interesting historical work today. And so I really think it's great that you're on here this afternoon, and that in 1945, when you were 16, and 75 years later, that you are able to talk to these students today and offer some insight. So I just want to welcome you. Thank you all for coming, and I will mute myself now and get on with the program.
Thank you very much, Julie. We have with us today ages 11 through 104 in attendance. So we're thrilled to have a century spanning the history and the ages of people working hard to support and hold up the edicts of the United Nations. I would like to now introduce Vice President Sean Josie of Model UN Whitefish Bay High, who would like to say a few words about the history of Boy Scouts and Troop 100 and why we have the flag raising and the color guard every year.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Sauer for helping me with this research. In 1907, the World Organization of Scouting began in the UK, and the US joined it in 1909. Since then, the WOSM has been one of the 130th international non-governmental organization, now with general consultative status with the Economic and Social Council of the UN. Today, there are about 165 countries around the world that have scouting out of 193 in the UN. In addition to this, the WOSM currently stated mission is to contribute to the education of young people and through a value system based on the Scout Promise and Scout Law to help build a better world where people are self-fulfilled as individuals and play a constructive role in society. Even in countries like India and Nepal have been influenced by the WOSM. Personally, I have been a member of the Nepal Scout organization, helping to transform and educate the countries based on the Scout principles. At one time, the UN helped to encourage third world countries to develop Scout programs, which includes former East Bloc countries. In 1957, the UN established its own Scout organization for sons of diplomats that were away from their home countries. Now, counting in the world includes more than 30 million boys and girls. Locally, the Troop 400 started doing the flag-raising ceremony in 2004. During that time, Mr. Brad Bailey was the Scoutmaster of the troop, which Mr. Sauer exchanged with him in 1999. Mr. Sauer was the Scoutmaster for many years. Due to Mrs. Annette Robertson's son participation, the troop was invited to participate in the flag-raising ceremony, a great community opportunity for the troop. During that time, no program was scheduled that involved both the US flag raising and the UN flag. A few years later, Mrs. John Robertson developed a program in addition to the flag raising at Whitefish Village Hall. It is important to note that our distinguished guest today, Mr. Sheldon Lubar, was a former member of Troop 400. It illustrates the importance of leadership skills that Troop 400 has fostered to create outstanding community leaders. Lastly, there are many activities and volunteering that Troop 400 has been doing for our community service by helping the young member of our community to learn and to grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean, for a wonderful brief history of the Boy Scouts and their importance in development of great community leaders worldwide. I would like to introduce a friend and a colleague in Milwaukee Public Schools, Michelle Wade, who is the director of the Social Studies curriculum for all of Milwaukee Public Schools and the director for the UNSIL program, which is the United Nations Schools of International Learning. And thank you, Michelle, for being here and being with us today.
Thank you, Annette, and happy 75th, everybody. Exciting time. I just want to give you a little idea of what we've been doing in Milwaukee Public Schools in regards to UNSIL. We began in 2016 with 9 schools, and every year we've added more schools on to now even include our Montessori and our language immersion schools. We designed and created a curriculum that was built on a trajectory of learning. We have curriculum for grades 4 through 8th, and it is really set in stone on a building block so that all the knowledge that's gained at every grade level then has a culminating project at the end. So in 4th grade, our students really dive deep and study and research a UN country. In 5th grade, they do a visual presentation on the organs of the UN. In 6th grade, they write a position paper on a global goal. In 7th grade, they create and design public service announcements for the UN, some of which you'll see this afternoon. And in 8th grade, they work on a service learning project. As you can see, the learning was intentionally designed so that it will build knowledge from the foundation of what the UN is all about, all the way up to the community action through service. Our culminating event every year is our World Fair, which brings all of our students together and orchestrates an opportunity for them to share what they've learned with other students, with other teachers, families, community members, and local dignitaries. This year, we were derailed by the pandemic a little bit. 2 days before our event, we were unable to hold it, but we're a work in progress right now of figuring out how we are going to hold the World Fair virtually in 2021. I cannot go on without saying thank you to all the people that help and support us. We work in collaboration with the MPS Foundation, Wendell Willis and Kelly Rickman. This could not happen without their support. And again, to my small team of two, Jenny Eckstein and Mary Ellen Rugza, they are the boots on ground, working with our teachers in everything they need, from supporting the curriculum, the logistics, and then to our teachers, because at the end of the day, the teachers is what makes UNSO come alive. I really believe in MPS, that UNSO provides opportunities for our students. And number one, know that they matter. Know that they're working to help solve some of the world's biggest problems, and they're working on it today. And their opinion matters today, not when they're grown, not when they graduate, but today. It also provides powerful opportunities for them to experience authentic learning. They begin to connect how science relates to poverty, how math links to health, how English language arts is essential in making our community safer. By providing real life opportunity experiences, they begin to understand that their education is relevant. They're no longer asking the questions, why do we have to learn this? You have to learn this because you are a citizen in this global world. And it really gives them a sense of meaning. It also develops some of their employability skills. They explore careers, they are becoming college and career ready. They take that knowledge, they communicate that knowledge, they become thinkers, contributors, problem solvers, collaborators, listeners, and they become reliable because they're working in groups where members of that group depend on each other. And so also offers students the opportunity to make a difference, especially with our 8th grade service learning project. Students identify a problem, they research it, they plan for improvement, and then they make something happen. And really, I just have to say, UNSO offers our students in MPS the opportunity to look through the lens of possibility, the possibility of a better world, a world where kindness and empathy matter, a world where speaking out and standing up makes a difference, a world where tolerance is not just a word that's thrown around with no real application of meaning, but where differences of opinions are accepted and appreciated. And lastly, a world where there is international peace and security and better living standards and human rights for all. Thank you, everybody, for your time today.
Thank you, Michelle, very much for that beautiful introduction of UNSO. Would you just introduce the video that's going to be shown? There'll be 4 short PSA service announcement videos, which are products by 7th graders of UNSO. Could you say a few words?
I sure can. We have 4 of them to share with you today. I just want to say, I think the first 2 are a little hard to hear with sound-wise. So you might want to turn up your volumes just a little bit, but these are our public service announcements that our 7th graders created, and we're going to be presented at the World Fair. It didn't happen this year, but we're working on that for 2021. So sit back, you'll see a few of them intermittently through today's meeting. And so here's our first one.
No. You turned the sound off, it looks. Right. Okay. Okay, thank you very much to those 7th graders who worked hard with research and to develop their PSA for last year's UNSIL program. I now would like to introduce Mrs. Pam Ruthier, who is an extraordinary teacher at Whitefish Bay High School and guides and leads the Model UN program for Whitefish Bay High, for which there is a waiting list every year. And so we're thrilled to be in connection with them, and they are helping to lead the program today.
Thank you, Annette. First, I would like to recognize and thank your mother so much for not only this opportunity, but so many other civic undertakings that she's responsible for. And she's had such an impact on the community and on our Model UN program. The Whitefish Bay Model UN program generally culminates at the end of the year with a UW Milwaukee conference where students from all over the state get together and represent different countries and perspectives of countries, and attempt to solve some of the world's most challenging problems. Last year, it was also just derailed a little bit by the coronavirus, and we could not go. We're hoping to engage in a virtual conference this year. I want to welcome and introduce my officers. Shanyoshi, you already met. He just presented. And then Oliver, Carolyn, and Lydia will be introducing themselves. The 4 of them have really been the bedrock of our Model UN the last few years. And one of our newest officers is in the audience today, Sophia Ungland. And so she's going to be stepping into their roles in the next year or so, and take on a lot of the responsibility that she sees them taking on right now. So I will hand it over to my officers and let them go.
Yeah, so is Lydia going to be speaking first? I'm looking at the agenda here. It looks like that would be the first thing on here, unless I am mistaken.
Yes, it
Lydia.
appears Lydia will be introducing Mr. Lubar.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Lydia Lancina. I'm a junior at Whitefish Bay High School and co-vice president of Model UN. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker on this, the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. As we celebrate an organization designed to bring people together, even via Zoom, it is imperative we remember the importance of such an organization now more than ever. Our keynote speaker has been successful in numerous fields and in almost everything he does. From a wonderful father to an auspicious businessman and government official, he really knows how to climb mountains. He's an impressive businessman and a key figure in education. Those of you who attend Whitefish Bay High School will recognize him as the name of the arch we pass under to enter our stadium field. In the midst of World War II, as a child, our keynote speaker was playing soccer on the very same elementary school fields that I played on. He has worked in the federal government, advocating for small businesses under the Nixon, Ford, and Carter administrations after being an acclaimed business owner and CEO himself. He's a major part of the University of Wisconsin system, currently on their advisory board, and a past president, and very involved with Marquette University in Milwaukee. I had the honor of having a phone conversation with him to write this introduction, where he shared his recipe for success and responsibility for my generation and all global citizens. It is to learn as much as you can so you can participate in the conversation as much as you can, and that learning is your way to get in the game. This man has great respect for everyone he meets and has a perspective of which I am grateful to have been exposed. In his speech, he will discuss the role the UN plays in the international community and the role it should play in a global crisis from his position as a US citizen, world traveler, and bright mind. Born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a renowned name, a great storyteller, philanthropist, and excited to speak today, our keynote speaker, Mr. Sheldon Lubar.
Mr. Lubar, I unmuted you, but I think you might just have to tap the little red microphone showing on your picture on your end. There you go.
Thank you. Old. I was born in 1929, 10 years after the end of World War I and 10 years before the start of World War II, in which at least 50 million people were killed and many more suffered the agonies of war. In addition, the atomic bomb was developed, followed by the nuclear bomb. Then came the Korean War, then the Vietnam War, then the Iraq War, then the Afghanistan War, and now the Syrian War, which continues today. My question to you is, what have we all learned? I will leave the answer to each of you, but my answer would be, we need the United Nations. We need it more today than ever, and we need it stronger than it is now. After World War I, most nations of the world tried to form the League of Nations, and they almost succeeded. It was our country, the United States of America, whose Senate refused to ratify our joining, and by the US not joining, the League failed. Sadly, I recall from my own personal reading that the loudest voice against the League was our own Wisconsin Senator, Robert M. LaFollette. But fortunately for all of humanity, under the leadership of Presidents Roosevelt and Truman, the US, and along with Prime Minister Winston Churchill of the United Kingdom, the United Nations was created in 1945 after the conclusion of World War II, and hence our celebration today. Between the UN and the US Marshall Plan, both Germany and Japan have been transformed into democracies. They had been hateful autocracies. They led to the World War II. In addition to that, in addition to the peacekeeping, we have built a network of alliances in Asia and Europe to keep the peace, we being the United States. In addition to the UN, international organizations like the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the World Trade Organization, and the National Security Council have also been established. The UN has proved itself as the best hope for civilization. But if we look around, we must confess that we're not there yet. There are still wars going on and poverty still exists. Today, I believe we are at a critical moment in the history of the world. and the United States is the critical player in that. Whether I'm referring to war, poverty, starvation, climate control, wildlife destruction, the actions of our country will determine in many ways how the future will develop. If you agree with me that the UN may be the best hope for civilization, then we Americans, every one of us, through our efforts and votes, must work to see that the policing powers of the UN are expanded and the members increase their financial commitments to an acceptable level for it to continue its never-ending peace mission. The UN Security Council needs greater authority, and the veto system, which gives the 5 winning countries of the world, I think there are 5, gives each of these countries the power to veto any action of the UN. I will end these remarks by urging all of you who can, I know some of you aren't old enough yet, to vote in the next presidential election, which is only a few weeks away. Be informed of each candidate's policies, and above all, of each candidate's character, and be aware of the importance of your vote. World civilization depends on a stronger UN. It is the only hope I can see for the elimination of warfare and poverty in all of the world. If wars are absolutely outlawed, the elimination of poverty will follow. Thank you, and I hope you will all work for wisdom from our country's leadership. That concludes my remarks. If there are any questions from those of you on this Zoom, I'd be delighted to respond.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lubar, for your very profound thoughts and statements, which I've myself hold dear, and I know my mother, Joan Robertson, who is listening, is thrilled by. I believe now each MUN officer will speak, introduce themselves and speak for about 3 to 5 minutes. And then there'll be discussion between you and they, and then we will open up questions from the audience. Thank you. Would Oliver like to go next, please?
For sure, absolutely. Thank you, Annette. And thank you to Mr. Lubar for wonderful remarks as always. So hello, everyone. I'm Oliver Niehaus. I'm the co-president of Whitefish Bay High School Model UN team. And first and foremost, well, thank you for being here, obviously. And by here, I mean your kitchen table or bedroom or wherever else you happen to be joining us today. It's honestly refreshing to have events like these during a time when we often question whether or not the core principles of our democracy remain intact. Groups like this, focused on those exact principles, not just here at home, but across the globe, really help to create a sense of hope and leadership in a time when those basic principles and sentiments are indeed quite absent. So, in order to understand why we are here, and why it is so important for each and every one of you to be here, we have to understand the role the United Nations plays in the world, but more importantly, what it represents. Well, we all know the United Nations is an organization designed to promote diplomatic relations between nations and to address many different humanitarian crises, as well as much more. But what does it represent? Well, at least to me, it represents the power of education and collaboration, the power of an informed populace, knowing how to exercise its rights and use its voice to foster meaningful change. It represents everyone of all ages, races, genders, religions, abilities, all around the world. The UN represents problem solving and critical thinking skills and cultivates a sense of unity. It motivates people to work together and helps us all realize that our similarities far outweigh our differences. And that's what's so great about the model of the United Nations is that it transfers to our Model UN program here at Whitefish Bay. From sitting on the General Assembly to being on the International Court of Justice to writing a position paper for Indonesia on the Security Council, I've really found that the core tenets of the United Nations that I mentioned are upheld and encouraged through our Model UN program. The people who choose to participate in this experience are the leaders ours and future generations need to combat the plethora of pressing issues we face. So I hope you understand how important each and every one of you are to sustaining the core principles of the United Nations, and in turn making our world a safer, happier, and better place for everyone. So thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. That was a great, I guess, introduction as to what we do at Model UN at Whitefish Bay. My name is Caroline Van Bell, and I'm a senior at Whitefish Bay. I'm co-president of our Model UN team along with Oliver, and I was drawn to Model UN for several reasons. First, I've always taken an interest in current affairs in our country and in our world, and Model UN has allowed me to dive deeper by learning about issues that I might have not necessarily read about in the newspaper. Second, it allows me to collaborate with my peers in a really unique way. I've enjoyed working with my peers at Whitefish Bay Model UN, who are representatives of the same country as me in the conference, but it's also been a great experience to work with students from all over the state of Wisconsin. I personally definitely miss not being able to attend the conference this past spring because of COVID. Being involved with Model UN has really helped me to strengthen my skills of collaboration, communication, and research. Preparing for the conference requires learning about not only your own country's position on an issue, but also the positions of other nations. So beyond the conference, our Model UN program has been able to help with fundraising for polio eradication efforts. And every year we raise money through a bake sale at school. So we're not solely focused on the conference in the spring, but we're also interested in improving the world around us, whether that is through local or global involvement. So in summary, being in Model UN has definitely increased my awareness of certain issues in the world, and it's really reminded me of how global our world truly is.
Thank you both. I'm Lydia again. I'm a junior and I'm co-vice president with Shashank. My time in Model UN has been quite the whirlwind. My freshman year, I joined the club and represented Israel, focusing on women's role in economic development at my first conference. It was quite an interesting topic that I attempted to grasp. I got to my first and only conference and was put in a room with experienced delegates who were really on top of their game. I kind of faked it the whole time. I really didn't know the whole system, how everything worked, but I actually got a resolution passed to a bigger subcommittee. It was shot down there, but that was okay because the experience was wonderful and I got to meet many other delegates and Model UN kids who knew what they were doing and could kind of show me the ropes. And then we sat through the General Assembly and I learned a ton. From that first convention, I met so many amazing people that I now call friends, learned about international relations, and heard the opinions from kids my age. That was the biggest part for me. And then I didn't.
And I am a co-vice president with Lydia of the Whitefish Bay Model UN. Throughout my last 2 years, I have learned so much and I'm still learning from Whitefish Bay Model UN. As a freshman, I got an opportunity to join Model UN, and at UW Milwaukee, I had to represent Israel and its women's right. And throughout that time, as Lydia said, I didn't have any idea how the UN and how it's function, but I learned it and I know what things are and how they work. And during that time, I learned much about international affairs and diplomats. In fact, it helped me think about what I want to do for as a citizens of this world, and how my action could help bring the change we want to see in this world. And the answer I found was the United Nations and its importance and its principles. And here is a short introduction of Whitefish Bay Model UN. Whitefish Bay Model UN is an academic club that offers Whitefish Bay High School students to learn about international affairs, diplomacy, and stimulus of how the United Nations function. We do different activities throughout the year, such as inviting guest speakers, participating in community activities, flag raising, and fundraising. Whitefish Bay High School started participating in flag raising ceremony in 2010. Around March, we attend a statewide conference and stimulation at UW Milwaukee by representing each country and their problems, where we debate, do critical thinking, teamwork, and leadership by learning how to do such diplomacy in international society. Thank you.
So at this time, thank you very much, Sean. Thank you all to the officers. Impressive. I would like to invite you to have a short discussion and questions between yourselves and Mr. Lubar. We are 15 minutes ahead of schedule, which I'm sure everybody's thrilled to hear. And so that leaves us a little more time for discussion amongst the five of you, and then we will open it up to the audience. So the audience can be thinking about questions they want to ask. And then I would like to start with Mr. Lubar. If you have questions for the 4 Model UN officers or them individually, if you'd like to ask them, and then Oliver, if you'd like to moderate between, or Caroline, between the officers, who's going to go first to ask questions of each other or to Mr. Lubar. Thank you.
So is it my turn to ask a question?
Yes.
Well, let me tell the Whitefish Bay kids, the Whitefish Bay students, excuse me, I take that back. Let me give you a little bit of advice. I heard somebody earlier referring to something that the teacher put forth, and the student's response was, well, why do I have to learn that? Let me advise you about something. You have to learn everything. If you have any characteristic to develop, be curious, ask questions, want to strive to expand your vocabulary, your knowledge of everything. You don't have to specialize. You can know everything. That's the end of my statement. Now it's up to you.
Questions for them?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Lubar. I thought that was very, very interesting. I guess I don't really have a question other than maybe just ask you to recite maybe something that you said, I remember back in one of our planning meetings, that I thought was really, really impactful. And maybe your answers changed, maybe it's stayed the same. But one of my questions was, obviously, you've been alive over 9 decades. And, that's kind of, crazy to think about that you've, been around so long and experienced so many things. So I guess I'll ask you this, maybe your answer has changed, but over your, 9 decades on this planet, what do you believe has been like the most historically impactful or most impactful experience throughout history for you?
throughout all of history. It might be this year's election.
I think that was your
This-
answer last time, which was, yeah.
Is that what I said last time?
Yeah, I think you said that, as well as like the president's
I mean,
Donald Trump.
I see things going on today in Washington and in Madison, our state capital, that are so repugnant to the idea of democracy, the idea of all of us being for our country and for the betterment of all of our people, that I think it's crucial that we change course, and that selfishness shouldn't be the determining factor. It should be, we should work on everyone's character to be, to recognize what I would call decency, and extend a helping hand to people that need a helping hand. And we all do. Nobody does it alone. Everyone needs a helping hand. And we haven't had that here. It's just been gimme, gimme. And as the younger generation coming up, you have to be aware of what's going on. You have to understand what's going on and understand why it is. Understand why a man wants to be president and what is he seeking? Is he seeking to help his fellow citizens, or is he seeking acceptance for himself? But all of us must, in a world of, in a free world where you're free to learn and you're free to explore and you're free to pursue your own professions or jobs or whatever you'd call it, or your entrepreneurship skills to form businesses, and you can do it here. And you can't do it in countries where tyranny is the rule. I tell you all to pay attention and learn and ask questions. And you cannot learn too much.
Thank you very much.
I just picture of my son David here. Hi, David.
Any other officers are interested in asking a question or bringing up a point?
I'll jump in if that's all right. So Oliver asked what the most profound event has been in the course of your lifetime. And my question's a bit similar to that, but more so, what do you think is the most important change that you've seen during your lifetime?
Well, I wrote a book about my own journey, and I started out by saying the only thing of permanence in the world is change. So everything changes every day, and you can change things if you work at it, or you can accomplish things if you work at it. And if you put integrity, decency, honesty at the forefront of your actions, you will get there. People will line up behind you and follow your what practices you establish. So don't think that anything is not achievable. Everything is achievable. Does that address it? Carolyn Van Bell.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's a really very insightful answer, especially for, I mean, Oliver and I, especially since, you know, we're seniors this year. And so this is our last year that we're forced to go to school and forced to learn things, but I think that's something that like we never want to stop learning, and that's why we're a part of this, because their curiosity about the world is so important that we just want to continue it.
And don't limit your curiosity. Be like, who did Walter Isaacson just write about?
Leonardo da Vinci.
Yeah, be like Leonardo da Vinci. He wanted to know everything from painting to sculpture to engineering to government to flying. In 1300, he was thinking of how he can fly. I'd say he was ahead of his time.
And medicine as well. Let's go on. Lydia, do you have, or Sean, would you like to make a comment or reflection or ask a question?
Sure. Okay, so we've talked about some of the pitfalls of our nation right now and our global society being tyranny and poverty. What do you think, looking at the United Nations, if it had the power and everyone contributed enough and like the means to do something, what action do you think an international body like the UN should or can take to impact sovereign states to make them hopefully make the right decision to hopefully make our world a better place?
Well, I really think that war should be outlawed. I mean, if you are in any way aware of the US budget and how much money, the most expensive thing in our national budget, which has grown, the deficit has grown, like this year will be the record level. And we're fighting a war and maintaining a military, and we should maintain a military. It doesn't have to be as big as it is, but if we had taken that money and invested it in infrastructure and invested it in programs to control the global warming and invested it in flood controls and fire controls and all of the other things you're reading about today, it would have been better spent than spent on building killing capability. And in order for a country to, so to speak, let its defenses down, it needs a police force. And that's what the United Nations was supposed to be. The first war that the United Nations participated in was the Korean War. And that war was fought under the United Nations. I'm really not aware of if they have ever done anything like that again. But the objective should be that war is ruled out, that the parties that have a problem with one another should be able to come to a fair court and get a fair hearing and get a resolution without going to war and trying to kill the other side. I mean, that is so prehistoric and so costly to civilization that, and I'm not the first one to say this, war should be outlawed. And then we wouldn't have to worry about the possibility of nuclear war.
Absolutely, yeah. I think definitely talking about the military budget and how a lot of money is allocated there, and instead of to, as you spoke of, infrastructure, things to fight global warming and climate change are definitely really interesting. And we'll have to see, especially with a new generation of people going into, the legislative bodies, whether we're going to see some sort of, policy emphasis on, more renewable sources of energy, putting those funds towards, saving lives instead of taking them. So I definitely curious to see how that plays out in the future. And I'm glad that, people are advocating for that. So thank you very much for your response. Does Shashank or Sean want to add anything, or does he have any questions, comments?
Yes, I have one similar question that Oliver and Caroline said. From your lifetime experience, what one experience would you like to share it with us that is very motivational, or that might help us guide or to do something towards the community?
Well, I frankly have been fortunate in my business experience to find that, as I said earlier, that nobody can do it alone. We all need the collaboration of other people. And I have been able to accomplish that. And I've asked myself why. And I think I know the answer. I mean, that I am an open book. And I have said I have no secrets, and I am truthful, and I am interested in other people and what they're doing and what their issues are and what their problems are. And I think that people trust me. And when I have done things in the business world that required borrowing money or getting investors, I was always quite able to do that. And my integrity is what I think was the persuading thing, because it wasn't necessarily my experience. I wasn't that experienced. And when I went to Washington the first time, it was in the second Richard Nixon administration. And Richard Nixon his administration had participated in a burglary of the Democratic headquarters. And I was there not because I had any political record, or not because I had anything that would attract. Well, what attracted my recruitment was I supposedly knew as more than anyone in the country on mortgage finance and mortgage, large mortgage, building houses, apartments, and things like that. And the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development had determined that what was needed was a study of housing in the United States. And I was recruited as the, so to speak, expert on financing of housing in apartments and housing projects and public housing and subsidized housing. And I went to Washington, and the president was more or less confined to the White House, and our job was to do a study and come up with new legislation and hopefully get it passed. And it was a Republican administration with the Democratic House, controlled by the Democratic House and the Democratic Senate, and the president they were about to impeach. And we did the study, we wrote the legislation, and I remember I went around with the secretary and we talked to the people, the key people in the Senate and the key people in the House, and we talked to we were under the supervision of the Banking Committee of the House and Senate. And before the president resigned, both houses voted our legislation in. And to the best of my knowledge, it's still the law of the land. And we accomplished a huge amount. I'm not going to get into that. But it was passed by the Senate and the House and signed by the president. And that was a very gratifying experience. And we had a team that was respected by all of Congress, and despite all the antagonism that existed, we got our legislation, or rather, you all got what is your legislation? Is that responsive?
Yes, thank you so much.
So
Well,
now let's open it up to the audience. And Nyama, I think you're going to lead on that. If you would, I don't know, would you explain if the chat box or how this is going to happen?
Okay, this is Nyama. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. So we've already received a few questions in the chat box from people, so I'll simply read them to Mr. Lubar and Model UN students, and then it looks like most of them are geared towards Mr. Lubar, if you can take the time to answer each one. So the first one was from Dan, and he says, as a retired accountant who prior to retirement was active in professional business organizations, he has noticed how difficult it is to bring up for discussion the United Nations or other important institutions. And he's wondering, how can the subject of the UN be brought into a discussion in a way that is productive? Any clues or hints?
I hope he's not asking me that question.
He was. Perhaps the pivot might be how to bring up difficult politics or discussions that are important when you're in a business setting.
Say that again.
So if you pivoted it maybe and made it more general, how have you, Mr. Lubar, gone about bringing up the United Nations or controversial topics within a business setting or at organization meetings?
Well, I must confess, I really haven't ever had that experience of talking about the United Nations in a business sense. Although our company, Lubar & Company, is involved in a lot of different businesses, you know, military things or things of that nature are one of the activities that we have been involved in. I don't have a good answer for that. I can tell, you know, I talked about, you know, producing military things. Those types of products are usually produced by large companies. But some time back, during one of our wars, we were presented with an opportunity to buy a company in Florida that made a weapon called Claymore mines. And if you stepped on them, they would pop up and explode. And financially, it was a very good acquisition. And one of the young people in our company had encountered this and said, this, it's really a profitable thing. And I said, I couldn't live with myself if we made a product like that blew the legs off of people. And so is there a way to enhance the understanding of people that that those things are evil? I think so. I mean, war is evil. I guess it's justified in some ways, but what we're trying to do through the United Nations is to put it on a democratic basis and somehow work out a compromise a fair compromise that doesn't result in killing more of the other guys so that you are the winner. Because now there's the ability to exterminate, and we don't want to ever see a war that does involve nuclear warfare. Although I can tell you, when I graduated before I graduated from university, I was in school, and the Japanese were still fighting. The Germans had surrendered, and the Supreme Commander in the Pacific was Douglas MacArthur, and he estimated that to conquer Japan would take between 1 and 2 million American lives. And we all know that at that same time, the atomic bomb was developed and it was dropped on 2 Japanese cities. And I was overjoyed because that ended the war, and I knew that in a year or two I was going to be, I think I was 16 when that happened, I was going to be called up. And that was the only way that it would end. Now Japan, as I mentioned, and Germany are both democracies now. And I think I can talk about Japan as I have observed it. It's a very disciplined, still a disciplined country, and still a law, and not still, but a very law-abiding country. So that would be my hope, that conflicts can be settled. In fairness to President Trump, he has not quite settled, but he is bringing peace to the Middle East. And these things can be, these conflicts between Arabs and Israelis can be settled. And it takes a willingness, it takes a lack of pride, it takes an organization like the United Nations, which in all honesty has been quite ineffective in that particular situation, but hopefully can be more effective now. They, like us, need good leadership. And I am in no position to attest to whether the leadership is as capable as we would hope for.
Okay, thank you. The next question that kind of ties in with what you just talked about was from Jim. And he says, it takes great courage for a business person to talk against war when large profits are made by wars and weapon making. And that ties back into you talking about the Claymore mines and not wanting your company to make them despite the profits. Jim wonders, how do you counter the barriers to ending war that are erected by other weapons makers and war profiteers?
Well, there's no question about that. and nobody asks what's the price. At least I don't think the government asks that too seriously, because they generally are negotiating with companies that develop these weapons, so that it's their weapon. But that's a very valid. Jim, is that whose question this was? That's a very valid question, and it's something that we just have to deal with. I have no answer for it. We just have to deal with it. And I guess it's part of there's too much money going into who electing people, and so to speak, buying influence. And we all know that. And we don't do anything about it. And then the people that have tried to do something about it haven't succeeded. And the only way you can succeed is if you surface the issue and get the people behind you, behind the leaders. And what Jim brings up is so valid. There's no question about it. People make a lot of money at this. Some people do.
Thank you. Next, we have a question from Carol Hale that says, what can possibly be done to bring about the outlawing of wars, given that you've thought about this so much? Have you thought about how that could be done?
Well, my simple thought is, people before me thought of it. Franklin Roosevelt, I mean, this was his mission in life. He didn't live long enough, but Harry Truman picked it up. I think all of the presidents realize it. I think what we're seeing today is President Trump is trying to break up NATO, which the United States has basically kept the peace to the extent there has been peace in the world. They've certainly, with NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is largely funded by the United States, we have kept the peace in Europe. And Europe seems to be on a route that there should be permanent peace there, but you don't know. There is this organization, the UN, and we have to get behind it and be a player there. And I think that means right now we have the veto that England, France, the United States, and the Soviet Union have. And the Soviet Union, they seem to be on the other side of most arguments that involve us, and they invoke the veto.
Okay.
I can't tell you what the solution is. I mean, it's an obvious one. Somehow don't require a unanimous when it comes to stopping a war. But that's something that takes a much deeper sort of a consideration. But it can be done if it's the high priority of an American administration.
Okay, thank you. So we have a question from Lily saying, suppose if war was outlawed, but a nation still spontaneously attacked another nation, would the United States have a disbanded military and be able to respond, or would we still have one?
I think we would still have one. And nobody's going to forget about nuclear weapons. They're here. And the only hope is they don't get more horrible. The only hope is that the pandemic we're experiencing now is one that arose from bats and not some evil country. But we do need a world authority to see that people act civilly.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from Tracy Ebert at the Peace Learning Center. She says, as a person who is working for peace in our community, I have tried to have a message of hope for the younger generations. They see this extreme divisiveness in America and wonder why they should stay here instead of immigrating to a country where citizens are more united and working together to see that all citizens have a decent standard of living. Do you have any words of hope that you would like to pass on to the younger generation?
Yes, I do. You have to be players in changing the direction that is so repugnant to yourself that causes you to want to move to another country. Ours is the best country. And if you go to New York and you see that, and you come in on the water, you see the Statue of Liberty and it's welcoming. Give me your
Tired, you're poor, you're huddled masses.
You're tired and huddled masses. I know my grandparents on one side and my father on that side came to this country, and they succeeded, and they came here because this was freedom. I mean, we're not perfect. I mean, when I see what we've done to the Native Americans in terms of taking all their land and killing them and so forth, it's not something I'm proud of, but it happened. Or slavery. God forbid that ever would happen. We all have to keep bettering. And if you're not willing to join the group that wants to better our country and uplift it and get better people involved in it, like yourselves. I mean, I take a look at the Wisconsin legislature and I don't think much of it. They spend most of their time trying to frustrate what the governor attempts to do in terms of fighting this pandemic. And they're spending our money by trying to stop him from using masks or anything else. I mean, you get involved and be a player. And I would hope that you don't go to Norway or some other place like that. They probably won't let you in anyway.
Okay, we have another question, this one from Carol, wondering how can we as individuals increase the power and the impact of the United Nations?
It has to come through our government in Washington. Mm-hmm. And we have representatives there, we have an ambassador there, and we've had some good people, good ambassadors, and we have to really decide what the changes ought to be and push for them and work toward them and get ourselves aligned with those people that think the way we do. And I'm talking about largely Europeans. Today, I mean, Germany, who was a bitter, horrible enemy, is now an ally. France has always been a supporter of the United States. We are part of England if you get down to the Declaration of Independence when we decided not to be a part of England. Those are countries that think the same as we do. And Canada, Mexico, I mean, they are, instead of just thinking about trade, we have to think about the conduct and the peaceful future of our country.
Mm-hmm.
And you younger folks are the ones that are going to be doing it. And right now, this is such a crucial time in your lives. You're learning. And the more you learn and the more your intellect expands and the more you read and the more educated you become, then of course, the more, what's the word I'm searching for?
I would say more successful.
Tell me, David, you're looking at me.
More successful in achieving your goals.
Yeah, the more believable you become. The more knowledgeable you are, the more believable you are. And it's not just not being a Democrat and a Republican. Think of yourself as an American.
Okay, thank you. So it looks like the last question we have on here is from John. He says, as a human rights and peace advocate, you know more than most people about how imperialism and its effects continue throughout the world. How do you think the United Nations can address imperialism and work towards a world where one nation doesn't subjugate another?
It's a pretty big question, and I wish I had a short answer. I don't. I learned a lot from my father, who came to this country in 1912 or 10 something. And it wasn't long that he was drafted into the army in World War I and sent back to France. He spent 2 years in Europe, over a year in the trenches. He was wounded twice, fought in 3 of the 4 major battles that the American Expeditionary Force fought in. And he didn't believe in war. And I know he voted for people that he thought didn't believe in war. This has to be a national effort. And you identified people are working in arms plants. They're not going to like not losing their job, but they'll get another job and it'll be better. And we're just going to have to work to change and put some teeth into the United Nations and see that their direction doesn't stop or that they don't get frustrated. I mean, I can't say that it's been a factor in stopping wars, but I don't know enough to really have an opinion that I would offer. I mean, there might have been other wars that the UN has stopped, but I think we have to take it more seriously, and we have to be a major player in it. And we should work toward disarming.
Thank you. And then on a final note, RS mentioned, thank you very much for a very insightful and inspiring discussion.
Thank you. I'm delighted to have been here among my new classmates. I visited the school a few weeks ago, and it looks a lot different than the one I attended. But it's, I guess it must be, how many students, are there 3,000 students there?
At Whitefish Bay High School? I'm not sure how many students are there
About
myself.
1,000.
Little over 1,000.
1,000, it looks like.
Is that all? Just 1,000?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's about 5 times as big, and we had 600 students when I was there.
People like more space these days.
You got it.
So, thank you. Okay, next we're going to move to showing another one of the 7th grade UNSL PSA videos, and then we'll move into some items for awards that will be presented. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen.
Say something?
Oh,
And I'm going to hit
I think,
play.
I'm going to excuse myself at this point.
Oh, you have an award coming after the video, Mr. Lubar. Can you hang on just a few more minutes?
Oh, sure.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let me get that. Hang on.
For this video, he gets the honorary membership. Where is this?
Are you hearing the video?
I'm also mute.
No, we are not able to hear the video.
So here's the
Okay. Somehow when I switch screens, I have trouble losing it. Oh, no. Hang on. All right. My apologies to everyone here. I'm going to mute myself on the phone.
Hey, Nyama, just to let you know, we still can't hear the video. So I don't know if you think we're able to, but we have not been able to hear the video.
Okay. My apologies there. Okay. Switching back. switching back and forth between my phone and the computer is having some difficulties there. So I'm going to switch it over to Annette, who is going to do an award.
So thank you, Mr. Lubar, for staying on for a few more minutes. We would like to present Mr. Lubar with an honorary membership to the United Nations Association of Greater Milwaukee. And I have sent in for that for him. I put in your address and all the information needed. And then you will be getting our newsletter. We know you're very busy and you go back and forth to Aspen and other places. So, but we hope you'll stay in touch with us and we will revere you greatly as a new member of the United Nations Association of Greater Milwaukee. And you suggested, what can we do to be a player? So we're inviting you to be a player in our chapter. Thank you so much. You'll be getting that in the mail.
Thank you very much. And I've enjoyed this session. I've enjoyed seeing you and Bruce and your mother especially. Please give her my kindest regards.
I will.
Thank
and
you.
one last thing to say to you. I was going to mention this in my closing remarks, but since you're closing out sooner, I would just like to say that my grandmother, Annette Roberts, was a suffragette and an activist all her life and helped start the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom in 1915. And she was a great devotee of Ralph Waldo Emerson. And as a child, we used to talk about him and she would read his essays to me. And one of her favorite quotes by Emerson was, "The only permanent thing in life is change." She said, "Always be flexible and adaptable with a compassionate heart." So thank you so much, Mr. Lubar, for being here today. And I remember when I called and asked you if you would do this, you really were not sold, but I'm so happy that you accepted. You said, "I don't want to be a keynote speaker. That's too large a task, but I will be a panelist, a discussionist." And I said, we can make this a community, a town hall meeting. And we have all benefited so greatly. And I know my mother is thrilled that you're here. And I see many members of your family. And again, young ages to old. And we're thrilled. We've taped it. So it'll be available to anybody you know that is not able to be here presently, but would like to see it. Thank you again, Mr. Lubar. Thank you to Teresa. And thank you to Mrs. Lubar.
Thank you. Thank you all.
We're done.
Thanks to all my family that's here. I see David and I know Charlotte and Joan are on. I couldn't tell if anyone else made it.
So we have just a few more things to say before we close the meeting. And if you want to stay on for a minute, our president, Steve Watrous, would like to say a few words, and then we're going to present the annual Peace Award to Jim Carpenter, who asked that poignant question, that very important question that you thought was important, the question by Jim. And we're going to give him our annual Peace Award if you'd like to stay on for that. Thank you. Go ahead, Steve Watrous.
Hi, thanks, Annette. Thank you all for joining this conference and for staying on despite technical problems. It wouldn't be a real modern teleconference if it didn't have some. Especially I'd like to thank the folks from MPS, including the superintendent who tuned in for this. We will be giving you, Sheldon Lubar, if you're still on, honorary membership, which will be a real membership because, well, you'll get our emails and invitations to all our events. And I'd like to second Annette's motion that we would like to follow up with you. And that is, we have some common interests, excuse me, and we hope to pursue those, peace and support of the UN being the main ones. And so we hope this isn't a one-time event. I followed your career very slightly over the years, and I've actually had a couple classes in your building at UWM, so I thank you for that. You came to our attention because of the op-ed that you wrote in the Milwaukee Journal 3 years ago. And I think some of the folks that maybe read that, we sent it around a bit. I'd like to read just 5 sentences if I could for the people that didn't see the op-ed. And I'd like to talk after that about sticking your neck out. The title is, Can't We Get Smarter About War? But actually it's really about, can't we get smarter about peace? If I were the editor, I would do that, because it's not how to do war, it's how to avoid war. And so you're right. I would opine that if we hadn't fought these many foreign wars, we would not have a national debt that today is about 20 trillion and growing, $20 trillion. At its worst with the spread of nuclear weapons, the entire planet is at risk of destruction if we continue to rely on war to settle disputes. We couldn't agree more. And then toward the end, you conclude, for the blood and money that has been spent on these wars, we could have rebuilt our country's infrastructure and given a free college education to every high school graduate and had no national debt. Can't we get smart? Can't we see that these wars bring only pain and unimaginable costs? Worst of all, they divide us. And this is great. We've been thinking for 3 years of inviting you to one of our forums, and we're so glad it finally worked out. I would say you stick your neck out because, number one, as you mentioned earlier, it's not been an easy thing to talk about promoting peace in the UN and business circles. And that's why you got our attention, because this is sort of unusual, eye-catching to us. And so we appreciate you writing the op-ed for the Milwaukee Journal. And probably you got some comment from your business friends. I don't know, that'd be interesting to know. We got some comments from our friends who got notice of this, and with the internet, there's lively conversation about everything. And some people said, well, he's too conservative. Why are you having him speak, and etc. Here's the thing. The UNA is nonpartisan on elections, but we're bipartisan on membership and outreach and people we'd like to talk to. In my opinion, if we're ever going to end wars and strengthen the UN, we need a civic coalition of the willing, that is including people in all parties and even those not interested in parties, to help us pursue full support for the UN, making the UN stronger, and using that as a tool to push toward peace. And so just to finish up, we're so glad you could join us, and we hope to see you again in the future. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Thank you all.
So now we would like to, I would like to, lastly, before we part, we have our annual Peace Award that we are going to present to Jim Carpenter, who's a board member, and he's been a staunch supporter of the United Nations. And I'm going to read to you just a little bit about Jim. Jim was born in 1949 in Cleveland. He became a peace activist in his early 20s. He was a conscientious objector during the Vietnam War and did alternative service at Evanston Hospital, where he spent his childhood. Jim serves as chairman of the Peace Committee of the UNA, United Nations Association of Greater Milwaukee Chapter, and has a noteworthy background in peace activity. Among his many contributions to the peace effort locally and nationally is his outstanding work for the prevention of nuclear war and nuclear proliferation. The focus of the award is the resolution Jim wrote in 2017, which was passed by the United Nations Association of Greater Milwaukee and has gained support of many regional and national allied groups. The resolution states, support negotiations for a global treaty prohibiting nuclear weapons. Support taking nuclear weapons off hair trigger alert now. Jim led a delegation to Washington, D.C. to lobby this resolution to representatives in Congress. We are grateful for Jim's undaunted dedication to the 75 years of the United Nations and the mission of it. Thank you, Jim, and we invite you to say a few words. We have sent the award to Jim, and Joan Robertson wrote a card to him, and we'd like to invite Jim to say a few words of acceptance. Thank you.
We cannot hear you. Unfortunately, we still can't hear you. I'm not really sure what the issue is, but might want to check your mic settings. I don't know. Sorry.
This is Nayama too. Jim, I can see that you're there and unmuted, but for something on your end isn't working.
If you check your settings, maybe go into the GoToMeeting settings. Maybe if you have multiple microphones or something, one of them is not connected or you're on a different thing. I don't know. Worst comes to worst, you could possibly call in on another device like Nayama's doing, but if we can avoid that, that would be preferable.
Can you hear me? I don't know what to do.
Yep, we just got it. Good job.
I don't
There
know
we go.
what
We can hear you.
We can
Okay.
hear you.
All right, great. So thank you, Annette, for that wonderful introduction to my work as an anti-war activist, including my work to try to rid the world of nuclear weapons. I am truly humbled and honored by this award. However, this award really belongs to the entire team of people that are both leaders in our UNA chapter and have been extremely active in the Milwaukee anti-war movement. The team includes Pam Richard, who is more of an expert on nuclear weapons than I am and has done enormous work on this issue. This team also includes Steve Watrous, Mary Land, Jack and Lucia Murtaugh, Debbie Metke, Christina Paris, and others. And of course, Joan Robertson and Annette Robertson themselves have been enormously important in the support of Milwaukee's anti-war movement, including the annual Lanterns for Peace, which commemorates the victims of atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I thank you for the $100 check and think our team will be glad to know that it will be donated to the World Health Organization. I was not always an anti-war activist. I loved toy guns and collected toy soldiers and enjoyed, quote, playing war when I was a child. But then Vietnam happened and I was confronted by the protest movement. And just as important, I was confronted by the horrible images of children being burned alive by napalm made by our country and dropped by our side. I had a complete change of consciousness. I became an anti-war activist. I began to understand that war is evil. It is irrational. It is insane. And as an economics instructor, I taught that war is the anti-economy. The purpose of an economy is to produce. The purpose of war is to destroy. It makes no economic sense. And of course, atomic warfare, which can destroy the entire human race, is the ultimate insanity. Nagasaki and Hiroshima, with hundreds of thousands being killed by just 2 bombs, is perhaps the greatest example of the immorality and insanity of war. I feel greatly honored today to share the virtual stage with Sheldon Lubar, a very successful businessman who wrote a terrific anti-war editorial that was published in the journal Sentinel and is on our website. Please read that editorial, and let me say aside here, thank you, Sheldon Lubar, for that wonderful anti-war talk today. I'm so thrilled to be on virtual stage with somebody who believes war is evil and it should be abolished. It's amazing that I'm just so amazed at your willingness to speak out about this. And most of all, young people, please join our anti-war movement. The world needs you. Please educate yourselves on the role of war on our planet. And please attend the Armistice Day anti-war event, sponsored by Milwaukee's Veterans for Peace and co-sponsored by our UNA chapter. The event is a Zoom webinar on Wednesday, November 11th at 7 p.m. See our chapter's website for details. unamilwaukee.weebly.com. That's unamilwaukee.weebly.com. And please join the End the Wars Coalition, and please join our chapter's Peace Committee. Thank you, and peace to all of you.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you very much. We're honored to give you this award this year. And I just would like to close. I mentioned my closing words. I didn't know if Mr. Lubar was going to be on still, but I would like to give him the last word. I think that's a famous quote on a news program. Maybe that was on PBS. But please, would you like to give the last word, and anybody in your family that would like to say a word? Again, we're so grateful that all of the Lubars and Lubar relatives attended, and we've taped it, and we're so grateful. And we feel we've made a lot of new friends, and we'll work together to outlaw war. Mr. Lubar, I give the last word to you.
Well, Annette, thank you. And thank you to all the members of the UN Society. And I'm very grateful to accept this honorary membership. And what your objectives are noble, and they're necessary, and they're vital. So keep up. And I hope all of the Whitefish Bay students never forget this and make this a part of their lives, to participate in politics, whether you are only an informed voter or even if you choose to run for elective offices. And perhaps you might consider that after Ms. Siegel retires, you might run for president of Whitefish Bay. Who knows? It could be a stepping stone. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.